Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today, it's always a joy to return to Dr. Joseph Murphy, and we're going to read from his book, Supreme Mastery of Fear, in particular, a chapter called You Are the Master of Your Own Destiny. A very powerful chapter, something that you need to know. Oftentimes, I talk to people that listen to material like my podcast, and they still don't believe they actually are masters of their own destiny. They think that something else out there is controlling their destiny. It's simply not true. You are the master of your own destiny, no matter what is happening in the universe. You are the master of your own destiny. By Joseph Murphy. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord hath anointed me to preach good tidings until the meek. He hath sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord, and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all that mourn, to appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified. Isaiah 61:1-3. We are told about the purpose of truth: to proclaim liberty to the captives and the opening of prison doors to them that are bound. The captives are those people who are bound by the chain of false beliefs, error, and superstitions. Man creates his own hell and his own heaven by his beliefs about himself, people, and the world in general. He blames the world, circumstances, people, and conditions for his hard luck, misfortune, and sickness. When he sees the truth, he is set free because he realizes he is master of his own destiny and captain of his fate. Man becomes that which he contemplates. His thought and feeling control his destiny. Take your thoughts to God. The prophet Hosea said a wonderful thing: take your thoughts to God. This is a very practical and simple approach, and habitually following this direction transforms our lives. The thoughts we habitually think form grooves or impressions in our deeper mind. The spirit or life principle responds and creates in our experience according to the tracks laid down in our subconscious mind. God is to us what we conceive God to be. I said to a businessman who was failing in business and in health that he should stop building a prison in his mind. He said to me that he had no imagination. I explained to him that imagination was the first faculty of man, and that everybody has imagination and is using it all the time, for good or ill. According to the way in which he uses his imagination, so does he become, and so does he act. He had been building a mental prison, blaming his difficulties on others. The government, relatives, and business associates. He began to see, however, that he was the propagator of his own problems. He began to take responsibility for his life, and he decided to take his thoughts to God within himself. He began to constantly affirm, "My business is God's business, and God is prospering me now. God guides and directs me. God's peace fills my soul. God is my boss and my guide, and God's healing love saturates my whole being." He kept reiterating these truths to himself many times a day, and gradually he eradicated the 101 vexations and contentious lurking in his mind. In his own words, he got the world, its news, and its crime off his shoulders, and he no longer hates, resents, and condemns all those around him. He is building a glorious future by taking his thoughts to God, as suggested by Hosea thousands of years ago. He created failure in his mind. Napoleon said that imagination rules the world. He became a famous general and a marvelous strategist. He imagined victory and focused his mind exclusively on the triumphant mind, becoming master of Europe. Historians inform us that before the Battle of Waterloo, he planned a retreat in case he lost the battle or the battle tide turned against him. He had to use it because he built a retreat in his mind, and that which he greatly feared came upon him, just as Job had pointed out thousands of years ago. Another interesting aspect in the life of Napoleon was that he held in great awe and respect any man with a long nose. This was a sort of superstitious belief. In all probability, the belief went back to his childhood, when some relative had told him that men with long noses had some superhuman qualities and were divinely gifted with extraordinary insights and wisdom. In other words, he transferred the power within himself to men with long noses. He created failure in his own mind, and he experienced it, for Wellington, who defeated him, had a very large nose. There's no power but of God. The powers that be are ordained of God. Romans 13:1. You are the captain on the bridge. The captain directs the ship. He does not feel that he is a victim of the sea or is at the mercy of the waves. He understands the principle of navigation and controls and directs his destiny, moving towards his goal in life. He does not worry, fret, and fuss about chance, fate, or accident. He plans for victory at all times. You are created to win, to triumph, to conquer. You should never dwell upon fear, failure, loss, lack, or limitation of any kind. To do so is to build a prison in your mind, thereby leading a limited and circumscribed life, a sort of miserable existence. You are placed here to go forward and never retreat. Fundamental truth. In the story about the laws of life, man learns this simple fundamental truth, taught in all ages, and found in all sacred scriptures of the world. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. The word heart is an old Chaldean expression meaning the subconscious mind. Any thought or idea felt as true becomes subjectified in the heart, and the subjective state of thought or conviction becomes manifest in man's world. A man's world refers to his health, companionship, finances, and home life, in fact, to all departments of his life. Man's dominant feeling or conviction about himself governs all the departments of his life. On this depends his success or failure. When man learns the truth, he proclaims the day of vengeance of our God. The word vengeance in the Bible means the vindication of truth, or the victory proclaimed by man's dominant mood. For example, if man is expecting failure, he is in the mood of failure. Moods create. Knowing this, he is able to change his mood to one of success. He now expects only the best, and his mood is one of confident expectancy. This proclaims the day of vengeance of our God. It is the day of victory for his good, or the manifestation of his desire. You are traveling in the ocean of life. Our Bible states that there arose a great tempest in the sea. Each man is a ship traveling on the ocean of life. All of us are immersed in the great universal sea of consciousness. All of us are traveling psychologically and spiritually to certain goals, objectives, and achievements. Sometimes the ship becomes covered with waves. This represents the race belief in failure, lack, and limitation. The storms of doubt, anxiety, and depression haunt us at times. The Lord will lead you and show you the way. The disciples said, "Lord, save us, we perish." The disciples represent your faculties of mind, your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, plus mental attitudes and expectancy in general. You must train your faculties of mind to look inwardly and to have faith in all things good, a joyous expectancy of the best, and to have a firm belief inscribed in your heart that infinite intelligence will lead you out of your difficulty and show you the way. Have a firm conviction in the power of God to solve problems and show you the way. This faith in God will enable you to walk over the waters of fear, doubt, worry, and imaginary dangers of all kinds. Quiet your mind and remind yourself that the I am within you is God. The only presence and power, stillness, is not only keeping quiet, it means that the causes within the mind by which the inward life is rendered discordant have been removed. It means that there must be no inner dissonance, but rather that when man goes within himself, he must find perfect and abiding peace. Knowing that God is within himself makes man live in a world that is ever peaceful. The lack of it makes man live in a series of conditions which grieve him to the end. He fusses and fumes about things which, if he saw them differently, would not cause one moment of unhappiness. Think of wisdom, truth, and beauty. Every day of our lives, we should meditate on beauty, love, and peace. We should feel that these qualities are being resurrected in us. As we meditate on wisdom, truth, and beauty, we will experience the second birth or spiritual awakening. What things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them. Mark 11:24. Note the difference in the tenses. The inspired writer tells us to believe and accept as true the fact that our desire has already been accomplished and fulfilled, that it is already completed, and that its realization will follow as a thing in the future. The success of this technique depends on the confident conviction that the thought, the idea, the picture is already a fact in the mind. And in order for anything to have substance in the realm of the mind, it must be thought of as actually existing there. Your problems and difficulties enable you to discover the divinity within you. The cause of all creation is the spirit in you. You are sovereign over your world. You are also in charge of your relationships with other people. Darkness is here so that we may appreciate the light. Poverty or lack is present so that we may learn and experience the fullness and abundance of God in the land of the living. The primitive man living in the jungles, and some people are still living in the Stone Age, may have never seen a home in his life and is satisfied with his lot. But when some missionary builds a hut for himself to protect him from the inclemencies of the seasons, the primitive man becomes aware of something better. How would you know that joy was unless you could shed a tear of sorrow? Your problems and difficulties enable you to discover the divinity within you. The fragrance lingers. Dr. Helena Davis, who lectures for me occasionally, said her living room is full of flowers of all kinds sent to her by loving friends. One woman had attached a note to the basket of flowers saying that the fragrance of these flowers lingers with her also. The good you do returns to you in ways you know not of. When they sent flowers, it made each one happy. Therefore, they were also blessings themselves. When you say I am, you are referring to the God presence within you, which is the living Spirit Almighty. That is the Lord of all. When you realize that your own I amness is the Lord God Almighty, and when you recognize it as the only presence and power, while at the same time recognizing that the Spirit within you is your boss, your guide, your way shower, your paymaster, your counselor, as well as the source of all your blessings, then you are becoming aware of the morning star, biblically speaking. The Bible uses metaphors and figures of speech to illustrate the invisible powers within you. The morning star comes into your experience when you become aware of God within you. Then you're able to cast light upon your problems and rise to great heights along all lines. Habitual thinking. Thou madest him to have dominion over the works of thy hands. Psalm 8:6. I know that my faith in God determines my future. My faith in God means my faith in all things good. I unite myself now with true ideas, and I know the future will be in the image and likeness of my habitual thinking. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are lovely and of good report. Day and night I meditate on these things, and I know that these seed thoughts, which I habitually dwell upon, will become a rich harvest for me. I am the captain of my own soul. I am the master of my fate, for my thought and feeling are my destiny. Become whatever you want to be. You can choose to be successful, happy, joyous, and free. The part is not written for you. There is no predestination. If so, we would have no right to criticize anyone or commend anyone in the world, as they would simply be fulfilling a role as an actor in a play. You can play any role you wish by stirring up the gift of God within you. You must remember that we could not awaken that within us unless it was already there in the first place. For 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday when it is past, and as a watch in the night. Psalm 94. This is poetic expressions meaning 1,000,000 years are as a second in the drama of awakening. Let the resurrection of God's powers take place in you, and wonders will happen as you pray. To be wealthy, man must assume the feeling of being wealthy. Then wealth will follow. The world we see is the world we are. Gibran, the mystic poet, points out, "Your children come through you, but not by you. And call no man your father upon the earth, for one is your Father, which is in heaven." Matthew 23:9. Your concept or estimate of yourself determines the circle of friends you have, your social and professional status, your financial state, and all the phases of your life. You can constantly enlarge that circle by getting a greater concept of yourself and by extending your horizons. The diameter determines the circumference of a circle. Your diameter is your real estimate of yourself. Remember who you are. Realize that you are a son or daughter of the infinite. Every day of your life, exalt God in the midst of you. Appraise yourself from a spiritual standpoint and realize that all the powers and wonders of God are within you, waiting for you to call on the infinite, which always responds. Job said, "I put on righteousness, and it clothed me. My judgment was as a robe and a diadem." Job 29:14. Righteousness is to think right, feel right, act right, and do right according to the golden rule and the law of love. In other words, think, speak, and act from the divine center, and not from the superimposed structure of fear, ignorance, and superstition. The judgment is your own conclusion in your mind. You're always judging in your mind, separated falsity from truth. Your judgment from now on is that you will see where discord is, love where hatred is, joy where sadness is, light where darkness is, and life where so-called death is. You will see wholeness and vitality where sickness is, and God's riches where poverty is. You'll begin to see others as they ought to be, happy, joyous, and free. The answers to all weaknesses, shyness, inferiority, and the sense of inadequacy is to follow the injunction of Paul, "Wherefore I put thee in remembrance that thou stir up the gift of God which is in thee." 2 Timothy 1:6. We all see a different world. How much are you worth mentally, spiritually, and in your knowledge of the laws of mind? All of us are living in different worlds based on our early training, indoctrination, beliefs, opinions, theological conditioning, etc. All of us look out through the contents of our own mentality, and we each see a different world. The world we see is the world we are. Each one of us has his own private world of thoughts, opinions, beliefs, and imagery. The radio engineer tells us that he can send program after program on one beam and they do not collide with each other because they are sent on different frequencies. It is my understanding that many transatlantic messages over the coaxial cables of the telephone company can be sent at the same time at different frequencies. There may be 5 members of your family, yet each one is living in his or her own private world, a wheel within a wheel. One scientist said, there were about an octillion number of electrons in our body, and our body is composed of electrons, protons, atoms, and molecules, but each atom or molecule is a world in itself. The difference between one metal and another is based on the number of and rate of motion of electrons revolving around a nucleus. Look at a bar of silver or gold when examined under the eye and ears of scientific instruments. They are not solid at all, but are composed of billions of little worlds within the bar of silver, gold, or steel. Don't compare yourself with others. God never repeats himself. You are unique, and there is no one in all the world like you. Many men and women who were timid, shy, and retiring have visited me for counseling, and I have always pointed out to them the vast potentials within them, waiting only to be called upon, resurrected, and utilized. I explained that when fear came to mind, it meant they were supposed to call on the divine reserves within them, thereby enabling them to overcome fear. As they practice calling on the God presence for guidance, strength, and wisdom, they rise from that sense of inadequacy and keep going when others give up. One man who had been born into poverty told me that the reason he had reached the presidency of his company was due to his tremendous drive to overcome poverty and achieve his true place in life. His lack urged him and acted as a powerful incentive to his ascent up the ladder of life. Many women with an inferiority complex have told me that it was this sense of insecurity, inadequacy, and inferiority which acted as their main driving force to excel, advance, and go up the ladder of life. A formula which I have suggested to many women is as follows. Stand before a mirror every morning for 5 or 10 minutes and affirm out loud, I am a daughter of the infinite. I am a child of eternity. My Father is God, and God loves me. And they keep using this prayer regularly every morning. It gradually sinks down by a process of mental and spiritual osmosis into their subconscious mind. This new concept of themselves being impregnated in their deeper mind comes forth, and their whole life is transformed. The law is, what is impressed in the subconscious is expressed. When you pray, go back to the Father of all. You come from a noble lineage when you contemplate your Father or God, or this invisible presence and power which created all things, visible and invisible. Heaven means the infinite intelligence in which you live, move, and have your being. When you pray, go back to the source of all life and claim guidance, wisdom, abundance, and inspiration from the pristine presence within the Father of all. We are the temples of the living God. It is true, of course, that we inherit through the genes the color of our eyes, hair, skin, and many other characteristics. We are told that we also inherit the inclination to acquire certain diseases, and that stupidity and high intelligence quotient are passed on to us by our parents. It is time that we ask ourselves, however, what we have inherited from the infinite presence and power of God within us. Actually, we are temples of the living God. We are here to reveal all the powers, attributes, and qualities of God inherent within us. Think of it this way. You were a boy who had a father, who was a boy who had a father. Keep on going back. Where does it lead you? Back to the primordial cell, the divine source, the Father of all. All religions say, our Father. All of us have a common progenitor, the life principle. The genes of Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Elijah, Muhammad, etc. are all within us. So are the genes of Genghis Khan, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. If you are a Native American, ponder over all the ancestors you've had since the Pilgrims landed. A mathematician could figure it out for you quickly. Robbie Wright, a young physicist whose lineage goes back to the early 16th century, figured he had 17,000 ancestors since 1600. As children, all of us were impressionable, malleable, and subject to the beliefs, thoughts, and conditioning of our parents. We did not possess the spiritual understanding or reasoning to reject all the negative thoughts and fears that were given to us. As an adult, you are responsible for the way you think, feel, believe, and act. You are the only thinker in your world. You and you alone are completely responsible for the way in which you act and react. You are what you think all day long. As you think and feel, so are you, and so do you become. Conditions are not the cause of your good fortune or misfortune. Refuse to give power to conditions, circumstances, events, or to the genetic records of parents, grandparents, or all the ancestors who preceded you. Men, women, and conditions are not the cause of your good fortune or misfortune. The supreme cause, the only cause and power, is spirit. You are not bound by karma or the past. God indwells you. Rejoice and be glad, and grow tall in wisdom, truth, and beauty. Whatever you are taught by theologians, parents, uncles, aunts, or teachers can be unlearned. The beliefs and traditional concepts you acquired when young, or the mere fact you imitated the superstitious acts of your grandfather when you were 8 years old, can all be changed and rectified now, this very moment. Fill your mind with the truths of God, and you will then crowd out of your mind everything unlike God. Lincoln failed many times in his political career, but he kept on persisting, having faith and confidence in a supreme power to lead him and guide him. He did not look at his so-called handicaps. He walked 40 miles to hear a lecture. His parents were illiterate and extremely poor, but he had a vision, and through the power of God he fulfilled it. Beethoven was deaf, but he heard the music of the spheres with an inner ear. Leonardo da Vinci came from an impoverished background and was the son of a country girl and local philanderer. Edison was kicked out of a school because the teacher said he was too backward, but he decided nevertheless to light up the world. Einstein was rejected by several schools because he was considered not bright enough to be admitted, but he nevertheless went forth and touched the heights in mathematics and physics and revealed a world of divine law and order. Newton was the son of a very poor farmer who died before he was born. Newton turned the source of all wisdom, and he gave us the law of action and reaction, lighting up the minds of men with his astronomical deductions and discoveries. Realize that genius springs forth from the poorest of families. Milton, though blind, gave us Paradise Lost. Divine imagination was Milton's spiritual eye, which enabled him to go about God's business, whereby he annihilated time, space, and matter and brought forth the truths of the invisible presence within all of us. Remember how Chico, the Parisian sewer cleaner, imagined and lived in a paradisical state of mind called the seventh heaven, even though he never saw the light of day. Being born in a palace or being a king's son or scion of a noble family does not necessarily mean we will have another Milton, Shakespeare, Phidias, or Beethoven. Men accomplish great things when they become conscious of divine lineage, and in quiet moments of meditation and divine imagery become aware of the fact that the invisible things of Him from the foundation of time are clearly visible. Physicians know that the cells composing your eyes are different than bone cells, and the cells of your heart are entirely different than the cells of your intestinal tract. Each cell functions according to its nature, however, and is a world within itself. For example, the cells in your bronchi cannot do the work of your liver, your heart, or your digestive system. You have another body. Your body is a complex compound of atoms and molecules. Actually, and more basically, it is composed of waves of light. Furthermore, you have another body within the one you now have. It is called a subtle body, a fourth dimensional body, or astral body, which means that you can leave your present body and appear in any part of the world. You will have bodies to infinity, and you will never be without a body, for a body is necessary for the experience and expression of spirit. Each one of us is projecting outwardly onto other people, circumstances, and events the world of his beliefs, feelings, and emotional conditioning. Two women may look at a drunkard in the gutter. That does not mean that the women are drunkards. It means the way they feel inside colors what they see on the outside. One woman has compassion for him and realizes the presence of God within him and calls it forth. The other woman says they should experiment with new drugs on him rather than on guinea pigs. She denounces him bitterly. Both see the same man, but they react differently. We likewise project onto others our emotions, temperament, and inner conditioning. You too can rise. While conversing with a man in a hotel at Amman, capital of Jordan, he told me that he had never known his parents, had been born in the slums, and now was a diplomat attached to a foreign embassy. He was on vacation visiting some of the historic sites of his homeland. While talking, he brought up a great truth, which was that no matter what the origin of your birth, you can rise, transcend, and grow if you know how to contact the divine presence within, which knows all and sees all. He said that many scientists and fiction writers claim that our genes determine our destiny and that all they have to do in the future is change the genetic code, that we can bring forth the type of men and women we want in the world, just about the same as we breed cattle or pedigreed horses. He added laughingly that some point out that if a woman wants a child like Einstein, Lincoln, Paderewski, Carver, or some other great statesman or scholar, all she would have to do, provided there was a frozen spermatic fluid bank of the particular man she wanted, would be to have artificial insemination. Then she could give birth to the type of man she admired. Others say that all we have to do is get some cells from a distinguished man and then place them in a culture media, and we could duplicate as many of that type of man we would wish. There is much folderol and balderdash plus fiction in all of this. The Christ in you. The guide at Corinth expounded quite extensively on the fact that we were standing on the same spot where Paul stood as he expiated and descanted on the epistles in the Corinthians. Then he added that Paul knew that Jesus was man's Savior. This is not correct, however, as you will perceive in perusing this chapter. Paul said, Christ in you, the hope of glory, Colossians 1:27. And if Christ be not risen, then is our preaching vain, 1 Corinthians 15:14. Awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light, Ephesians 5:14. What does the Bible mean by such language? The literal interpretation of the Bible has done much towards driving thinking people into unbelief. We must understand that the scriptures of the world abound in symbolisms. Many phrases and chapters of the Bible reveal the impossibility of being rendered literally. And if any part is admitted to be figurative, allegorical, and mystical, so many other parts may be. The men who wrote the Bible, most of them are nameless, said to themselves, we know what we wish to convey, but how can we explain it to the people? Therefore, they decided to speak of problems, difficulties, war, strife, sickness, and then explain how to overcome the problems of which they spoke. This is not a sanctimonious state, singing of hymns, going to church, following the rules and tenets of some religious organizations, etc. It means the practice of the presence of God within you. It means to express light, love, truth, and beauty now, and to be happy and living in the joyous expectancy of the best. When you are exuding vibrancy and your family and social relationships are good, that is also the glory, the glow, and the ray of God. Christ means the presence of God in you. The word Christ, as you know, is not a proper name. It refers to a title. It is a Greek word meaning anointed or consecrated. It corresponds to the Hebrew word Messiah and to the word Buddha. The Christ in you means the divine presence in you, the spiritual truth about you. Jesus is the name of a man. The words Jesus and Joshua are synonymous. The latter means God is the solution. God is the salvation or the solution to all your problems. To see Christ, and the other means to perceive spiritually peace where there is discord, love where there is hatred, joy where there is sadness, and wholeness, beauty, and perfection where there is sickness. This mental and spiritual exercise is oftentimes referred to as the practice of the presence of God. The 4 cardinal points. The orientation of the Great Pyramid relates to the 4 cardinal points of the compass, which symbolize the 4 parts of man: spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. The 4 cardinal points also refer to the 4 letters in the name Jehovah: Yod, He, Vav, He. Yod is consciousness, spirit, I am. He is the idea, the thought image in your mind. Vav represents feeling, love, and emotion. The final He is manifestation of that which you imaged and felt to be true. This is the way all things are made. There is nothing made that is not made this way. The law of life. A rancher who accompanied us asked me, why are the first fruits given to the Lord? He quoted this passage, Thou shalt take of the first of all the fruit of the earth, which thou shalt bring of thy land, that the Lord thy God giveth thee, and shalt put it in a basket. Deuteronomy 26:2. There is a custom among many people in the Middle East and other places to let the first fruits die as they belong to God. The firstborn, according to the traditions of Israel, gets the property or estate. There is the law of primogeniture in some countries, which is seniority by birth in a family having the same father and mother. In English law, it is the exclusive right of inheritance belonging to a firstborn son. The law of life is a reversal of all this. To reject the first fruits and eat only those that follow is due to misunderstanding. The explanation is simple. All it means is this: that which you now are and that which you long to be, you must die to the old state and live to the new. In other words, you exalt and nourish the ideal in your mind, knowing that an almighty power is moving on your behalf. As you remain faithful to your ideal, it will gel within you and the old state dies and the new manifestation appears. And I, if I be lifted up from the earth, will draw all men unto me. John 12:32. This means that when, through prayer and meditation, you lift your ideal up to the point of acceptance, the manifestation will appear. In other words, you will experience the joy of the answered prayer. His mind held him in bondage. A sister of mine who taught school for many years prior to her entry into the convent in England told me that she once had a very bright boy in her class. Actually, he excelled all the others, and she recommended him to the local priest, who agreed to send him to the seminary. Tuition would be free, however, he refused. His reason was, "I am only a miner's son." His father had the same attitude. This attitude of mind held him and other boys like him in bondage. There's an interesting sequel to this. A member of the local gentry wanted to adopt a boy. My sister recommended a child in an orphanage nearby whose parents were dead. This man and his wife adopted the boy at once, completely indifferent to the fact that for several generations his progenitors had been miners. This boy received private education by a governess and later on was sent to a college in England. He grew up according to the standards of the day and associated only with wealthy boys and girls. He followed the customs and traditions and the caste system which prevailed in his upbringing and environmental training. On one of his visits home, he called on my sister to invite her to his birthday party and mentioned that he could not invite the student who was going to drive her to the party because he was a miner's son. You can see the whole picture: an orphan boy, a miner's son, conditioned, educated, and trained to have a high estimate of himself, who because of his training thought another miner's son inferior. The other boy mentioned previously, who was so brilliant, lacked the heart to try because he was taught to think he was of a lower class and considered himself inferior. His mental attitude held him back, not his genes, chromosomes, or the fact that he was a miner's son. You can change your mind. It is foolish to look to your parents, grandparents, or ancestors as the source of your powers, qualities, tendencies, aptitudes, and characteristics. You thereby limit your potential. Realize that you came from God. God indwells you and is your heavenly Father. All his wisdom, power, and glory are at your disposal, waiting for you to call on his inexhaustible reservoir of strength and intelligence. You are not a mere confluence of atoms, molecules, genes, and inherited tendencies. Instead, you are a son of the living God, an heir to all of God's riches, spiritual, mental, and material. And be not conformed to this world, but ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Romans 12:2. This is the key to a new life. Your mind is a recording machine, and all the theological beliefs, impressions, opinions, and ideas accepted by you and given to you in your childhood are impressed in your subconscious mind. But you can change your mind. You can begin to fill your mind now with the godlike patterns of thoughts and align yourself with the infinite spirit within you, claiming beauty, love, peace, joy, wisdom, power, and creative ideas. The spirit in you will respond, transforming your mind, body, and circumstances. Your thought is the medium between spirit and your body and the material world. Some of the greatest minds came out of the slums. Great men and women will not come forth in this country because their ancestors came over on the Mayflower or because of their heredity, or by those who think you can bring forth a better race of people somewhat similar to the way you breed horses. You can't omit spirit or God. Some of the greatest minds came out of the slums. George Carver looked to the spirit within him for guidance and inspiration, and he rose to the heights and blessed his people and his country through his discoveries, inventions, and formulas as a great chemist. He ceased to think of himself as a slave or a serf or as inferior to anyone. His constant prayer was in all thy ways, acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. Proverbs 3:6. And God answered him, blessed him, and prospered him. Ask yourself frequently, what did I inherit from the infinite? And the answer is, all of God indwells me, and I must acknowledge this power and awaken this presence within me and bring forth wonders, for his name is wonderful. All you have to do is ask. The Bible says, ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. Or what man is there of you, whom if his son ask bread, will he give him a stone? Or if he ask a fish, will he give him a serpent? If ye then, being evil, know how to give good gifts unto your children, how much more shall your Father which is in heaven give good things to them that ask him? Matthew 7:1. These verses from the book of Matthew represent some of the greatest truths of the Bible and set forth a wonderful formula for prayer. You are clearly told to ask, and you shall receive. To ask in Bible language is to claim your good, and then the Spirit within will honor and validate your claim. In these passages, you are told God is your heavenly Father, and you are to expect from him all the blessings of heaven. Look upon God as a loving Father, a kindly Father who watches over you, cares for you, guides and directs you, and provides for your welfare. As you make a habit of this, you will discover that you will find yourself in your true place, doing what you love to do, divinely happy and divinely blessed in countless ways. God is to you what you conceived him to be. He was born in Hell's Kitchen. One of the great surgeons I knew once told me that he had been born in Hell's Kitchen, that his mother was a prostitute, that he was taught to steal when young, and that he never even knew his father. You might say that everything was against him, or ask what chance he had. The answer is that he had the chance of a lifetime. One day a surgeon dressed his wound following a fight, and he said that the man was so kind and good to him that he decided to become a surgeon himself. He related the following: I held a picture of myself dressing in white, operating, and I asked God to help me. Suddenly a change came over me. I could not steal anymore. I studied hard, won a scholarship, and one of the professors paid all my expenses in medical school, saying, you can pay me back by becoming a good doctor and a good surgeon. God had answered his prayer. We can bring about changes in cellular structure of cactus, corn, rice, and fruits, as scientists are doing from day to day. In order to bring forth a more godlike man or woman, however, it does not depend on his or her body or structure of the brain. It depends entirely on stirring up the invisible, the intangible powers of God within. You do not mix in a mortar quality such as honesty, integrity, justice, joy, courage, faith, confidence, inspiration, love, and goodwill. You can't incorporate dreams, visions, and illumination in some mixture and say, now we will have a new man. In order to transcend, man will need peace. That inner peace will enable him to be at peace with the world. He will need love and goodwill to overcome the anger, trials, and tribulations of the world. He will need courage, faith, and confidence in the creative laws of his mind, causing him to serve the rest of mankind in a more wonderful way and bring peace to this changing world. Peace, harmony, joy, love, wisdom, and understanding are of God. You can't build these into a man or woman, since they are already there, only waiting to be released by the individual. Wherefore I put thee in remembrance that thou stir up the gift of God which is in thee. 2 Timothy 1:6. You can soar like a butterfly coming forth from a cocoon. Some years ago, I read where an attorney pleaded excuses for the vicious criminal acts of his client by stating that the man came from an impoverished family and squalid environment, that his father was a drunkard and his mother followed the primrose path. The wise judge said to him, don't give me that story. This man's brother, brought up in the same area under the same environmental conditions, is one of our most distinguished jurists in the state. The butterfly comes forth from the cocoon and develops wings enabling it to fly and reveal its beauty and glory. Likewise, you can come forth from your house or prison of limitation or bondage and soar aloft with the wings of faith and imagination, and so reveal your own glory. It is true that you inherited from your parents certain genetic tendencies which determine the color of your skin and eyes and your physical constitution. Your temperament and disposition are affected by the mental and emotional atmosphere of your home. Every child is subject to the early training, indoctrination, moods, feelings, and beliefs of the parents. However, when the child grows up and becomes aware of the divine presence within, he can rise and transcend any handicap. Suddenly, he becomes aware of the divine source. As he begins to contemplate the eternal verities, he is lifted up above the parental and environmental atmosphere and influence, both past and present. All habits can be changed. We may have been victims of false teaching, false theological beliefs about God, life, and the universe. But we can change the negative beliefs by making it a habit to regularly think constructively, harmoniously, and peacefully. Our subconscious is the seat of habit, but we should be aware that all habits can be changed. Our mental and emotional fears, superstitions, taboos, and structures were undoubtedly transferred to us in our youth. You can transform your life now. During my tour of India, Nepal, Thailand, and other countries, I heard college graduates say to me, "Oh, I may come back in another life as a tiger, lion, dog, or other animal if I don't behave in this life." They mentioned that their present status in life was based on their karma and they were reaping what they had sown in a former life. They believed they were being punished for past wrongdoing. To many of them, karma was cruel law which imposed punishment upon them, a sort of eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. All of this is far from the truth, regardless of man's past. If met in the right way, divine love dissolves everything unlike itself. God is the eternal now. Karma means the law of action and reaction. In the mind principle, there is no time or space. Any man can transform his life now by giving himself a divine transfusion of love, light, and truth. He wipes out the consequences of past errors through the cleansing of his subconscious mind. When we pollute or impress false beliefs in our subconscious mind, we suffer the consequences, or we can eradicate them by scientific prayer, which is the practice of the presence of God. Your belief expressed. Your subconscious assumptions, beliefs, and convictions dictate and control all your conscious actions. In other words, you are belief expressed. Come to a decision now and realize you will no longer be subject to the false patterns of thought given to you when young. Spirit or God in you is the only presence, power, cause, and substance. Join up with your Heavenly Father and transform your life. Modern science knows that spirit and matter are incontrovertible and interchangeable, that matter is simply spirit slowed down to the point of visibility. It is wrong to say that you are conditioned by your environment, your home, your job, your business, your surroundings, as it is suggestive only. But if accepted by you, you will continue to repeat the same old patterns as your forebears and perhaps live the same old life based on creeds, dogma, and traditions. Externals are not creative. The creative power is in you. A scientific thinker does not make a created thing a cause. It is an effect. Knowing the location of the creative power and the primal cause, you will no longer attribute to any person, place, or situation the power of creation or generation. Your own thought is the only creative power of which you are aware. Do not deny what you affirm. Dormant and inherent within you are all the powers of the infinite. A wonderful prayer to practice is as follows. God is, and His holy presence flows through me as beauty, harmony, love, joy, wisdom, understanding, divine guidance, and abundance. I know it is just as easy for God to become all these things as it is a blade of grass, and I give thanks that it is so. Reiterate these truths 3 or 4 times a night and morning, making sure that you do not subsequently deny what you affirm, and you will find you really are a son or daughter of the infinite and a child of eternity. All the powers of the infinite begin to move through you, which is called in the Bible the Christ in you, the hope of glory. Look always to your spiritual inheritance and never to your human parents or ancestors. You have power over your life and the means and capacity to transform your world. It is time for you to claim your kingship, because you are a king over the entire conceptive realm. Remember, you could go into the jungles of some country and adopt a boy who is primitive and illiterate, and then teach him the wisdom of God and have him practice right thought, right feeling, and right action, while all the time reminding him that he is the son of a king and heir to the throne. And the boy will believe you. He will play the role of a prince. He will develop a regal bearing and a noble stance. Gradually, he will become a king over his thoughts, words, deeds, actions, and reactions, and assume his sovereignty over his life. This happens because this almighty king is within him. Otherwise, it could never happen. You are a son of the living God. Claim your inheritance now. The inner voice will say to such a person, "Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee." Hebrews 1:5. The idea of karma comes from the East. The crimes, errors, mistakes, and heinous offenses of man can be expunged from the subconscious mind, banishing and freeing the person from the results of punishment naturally occurring to the impressions made in the subconscious. Perfunctory prayer or joining some church will not do this. Nothing superficial will suffice, but an intense desire and real hunger and thirst on the part of the individual for a new birth in God, which alters fundamentally his character, plus a constant saturation of his mind with eternal verities, will wipe out the punishment or reaction from the subconscious. The action is of the conscious mind, and the reaction is that of the subconscious mind. Karma is not some dread sentence to be overcome or which has to be explained. The idea of karma comes from the East, but in all sacred writings, including the Bhagavad Gita, you will find that if you return to the divine center and contemplate the truths of God, that is the end of the old state and the birth of the new. All adversity is redemptive and remedial through the practice of the presence of God. A changed attitude changes everything. No matter who you are or what you are, and regardless of any zodiacal sign under which you may have been born, you can call upon the spiritual presence and power which created the universe and which is omnipotent to guide, direct, and heal you. If you open your mind and heart to receive it, it will answer you and restore your soul. However, if you believe that Saturn is working against you, then the infinite cannot work through you. Rely upon the spirit within. Then all things will become new, and all the obstacles and difficulties will melt and dissolve in the same way as the light dispels the darkness. Surely there is no enchantment against Jacob, neither is there any divination against Israel. According to this time it shall be said of Jacob and of Israel, "What hath God wrought?" Numbers 23:23. Jacob is man awakening to the truth of the divine presence within him. Israel means a man who believes and knows the sovereignty of the one Spirit and the regency of his thought. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue. Exodus 11:7. This concludes you are the master of your own destiny. And the most important idea I want you to get from this is it doesn't matter your genetics. It doesn't matter where you were born. It doesn't matter about your family. It doesn't matter what happened to you. It doesn't matter that some terrible, horrible thing happened to you and your family. It doesn't matter what country you're in. It doesn't matter the circumstances of your life. It doesn't matter if you're a Leo or Sagittarius or Scorpio. It doesn't matter if you were born incredibly poor or incredibly rich. It doesn't matter what kind of body that you're in. You are the master of your destiny. Your genetics have nothing to do with it. The only thing that has anything to do with it is the God within you. And connecting to this in the way that Joseph Murphy explains it, it is your subconscious mind, to your heart, that portion of you, if you imprint it with only good things, then only good things will be expressed in your outer environment. It's a big, wonderful, beautiful thing because you've been told all your life you have no control over your life. You have a destiny and that's it. It's already been decided for you. But it's simply not true. You control your reality. You control it with every breath, with every action and every thought. And you can change your reality wherever you're at, whatever situation you're in. Tell me about it. I promise you there's some pretty devastating situations that I hear about, that I know you're going through, that are rough. You're in a very difficult place and situation. I promise you I understand. My heart goes out to you. But you are the master of your destiny. You, with your own thoughts in mind, can imagine. With your imagination, you can imagine a different life. And what you imagine will become true when you believe it to be so. It's a simple thing, but it's a powerful thing to overcome. Sometimes just that one idea, you need to overcome the idea that you have a destiny, that you're stuck in your genetics or your environment. You can overcome anything. You are the master of your own destiny. So many wonderful little examples here given by Murphy. I love them all, but I just want you to remember that one thing. Check out all the Joseph Murphy episodes, including the meditations, where I've put many of these affirmations into a variety of different formats, including a sleep meditation. They're very helpful, and he's one of the great affirmation writers. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.